Hello, everyone. I'm really thrilled today to be joined by Professor Ethan Mollick of the Wharton School, who really has developed a reputation as, I think, the leading academic who's educating the world on how to use large language models and agentic tools. He's a fantastic author of the book Co-Intelligence, and he has a blog called One Useful Thing. I suggest take some time out, but let's talk to Ethan now about all things AI and really where this is going and what it means to us as individuals and professionals. Hey, so Ethan, let's start with a little bit about Otters, right? So your Otter test wasn't just a delightful but unexpectedly precise chronicle of AI's acceleration. How do you see this rapid technological evolution affecting how we think about intelligence and creative work?
So the Otter test, by the way, is I've been using Otter on a plane using Wi-Fi as my test over the last 3 years of AI drawing ability. And so I think that it's just generally benchmarks are weird for AI. It's very hard to know what AI is good or bad at without lots of testing. Tests get contaminated. So there's all sorts of kind of confusion of understanding where things are going in the AI space. So idiosyncratic tests help a lot. And both my sort of own little benchmarks and also the larger scale tests that we have from benchmarks that are widely used suggest some sort of acceleration happening, right? So probably through a combination of the fact that the models keep getting better and we keep learning more techniques to scale them even better. So really fast takeoff, and at least on a benchmarking approach, AI is just really improving rapidly.
Right. And you know, we're passionate about doing research at HFS. Obviously, we're an analyst company. But in the past, it took time. And in your recent work, you know, you talk about the bottleneck that isn't the research anymore. It's figuring out what research to do. So can you expand a bit on how people can use models more effectively doing research and how you see our industry and yours in education changing as a result?
So one of the biggest trends in AI is about agents, about having AI be able to do autonomous work. General purpose agents that kind of substitute for a human aren't there yet, and we don't know when they will be, if they will be. But specialized agents like deep research agents are quite good. So I don't know if you've had experience yet with any of the deep research tools. All of the major providers have them. Probably I would suggest that Gemini or ChatGPT's or maybe Claude's research tools if you haven't tried them. And, you know, these things work so that you ask them a question and you get like a 40-page report back. And I've been speaking to lots of people in, you know, analyst heavy industries. And if you think about it, a lot of white collar work is this way, right? So we pay for marketing reports. You pay to have outside counsel write a report for you about the risk associated with the job. You get, you do research on whether an accounting practice is correct or not. You obviously do research for as a stock market analyst or another, you know, and the question is, how good are these systems at this kind of job? And the answer from talking to lots of other workers who are senior workers in these various knowledge work fields is quite good. There's, you know, data sources have been relatively limited. They tend to use the open internet, but you can produce pretty great results. And now they're expanding to more private data. So that opens a lot of interesting questions. I can now generate really high quality research results on demand. What does that leave for human researchers to do? I mean, they don't do everything. They don't have the same kind of opinions. But what does that do for mediocre research? What does that do now that I can get research on demand? How does that change my decision making? I think there's lots of really interesting questions to ask that we don't have answers to.
Yeah, I mean, it's transformational in the analyst business. We would hire juniors straight out of school or college to go fetch information, make calls, run surveys, things like that. But I've been using it a lot for my job. I use it more as an augmentation tool. So I'll write something and I'll maybe pump it through ChatGPT just to see if it can add any fresh perspective or ideas and things like that. And I found it's incredibly good at finding the information. And I barely need to go to juniors anymore for additional support and help. I can get a lot of what I need straight at my fingertips. One, do you have a similar experience? And two, what does this mean for the youth of today who are starting in the workplace? You know, they've got access to way more information than we had 20, 30 years ago, but at the same time, they don't have the the emotional maturity to get on. So how is this going to impact, do you think, the whole cadetship model for, academics and research analysts, these types of people?
I mean, so let's start off with kind of, school, right? Which is where we start these kind of training, and everything's in chaos right now. I mean, people are cheating continuously with AI. It's bad, but we'll figure it out. There's also some evidence that properly used AI works like a great tutor or accelerant of learning. We'll learn how to flip classrooms where you use AI outside of class to do a lot of activities and testing inside of class. We'll figure that stuff out. I'm not that worried about that. But I am worried about the other piece you're discussing, because I teach people to be generalists at a place like Wharton, and then I send them out to you to be specialists, because they learn the same way they have for 4,000 years with an apprenticeship. They work with somebody who's more experienced. In return, the more experienced person gets somebody to do the grunt work for them, and the junior person, by writing the same intro to report 50 times, learns why it's important to do, how to do it right. That's already broken, and will certainly be breaking this summer for most people, because the interns are not dumb, and they want a job. So AI is better than them at their work already. So they'll turn in AI work, and middle managers would rather turn into AI than an intern. So that breakdown is a really big deal. I think that the way that around it is start being deliberate about how we train people. So mentorship isn't just do the work for me and you'll learn passively. It has to be active. And similarly, if Phil, as you've found that you probably need less interns than you did before, or less junior people, you're going to have to consciously decide what your pipeline looks like, rather than just hiring as many juniors as you need to help and promoting the ones who are doing well. You're going to have to invest more in getting the right set of juniors on board even before you need them, so you can train them enough to get them to a level where they can be helpful.
Let's think about how this is impacting enterprise. And in your postings, Ethan, you've said AI is fundamentally a leadership problem. So what kind of leadership is needed now that AI is reshaping work at this task level that we've been talking about?
So, I mean, you look at, there was I don't know when this is going to air, but just a couple of days ago, Amazon put out a memo about how AI is going to transform work. We saw the same kind of thing come out of Duolingo and Shopify. And I think these are good statements of urgency. They're kind of terrible as leadership statements about what the future holds, because they don't actually tell anyone anything. They're like, your jobs will change, use AI. But it's part of the goal and role of a leader is to make sure that they can tell you why you're doing it, what you're doing with AI, what the point of this is, what will your job look like in the future? Give me a vision of what work will be like. Actively shape how the company will transform in a world with AI involved. And I think that is both important for the employees who want to know what's going on, but also strategically, because work is going to change. And that doesn't just happen organically. That has to be a choice. And so I want to see leaders making more choices. Then I want to see how they're setting up incentive systems and structures in order to actually make those choices become real. And I worry when it's just kick the can down to more junior people or the second or third level of management, which is transform with AI. That's not a marching order. That's just confusion.
No, I'm completely with you there. So what do you think makes an effective lab environment for exploring and exploiting AI with your team?
Well, this is kind of part of my what I've been talking about a lot, which is the idea that you need three elements. You need leadership, like we talked about. You need the crowd. You need everybody working on AI, and you need the lab. And the lab is really, it's an ambidextrous organization. We would say it does two things at once. One thing it does is take the ideas that come out of the crowd. So people in your organization are figuring out how to use AI all the time to do work better. And you want to turn those into immediate products everyone can use the next day or two later. Validate this prompt works really well. Test and benchmark how good the deep research tools are. And also start to build for the future larger, more agentic systems that might succeed. And the lab isn't a technical place particularly. It's a mix of people who are really good at using AI in the crowd and people who are technically savvy. But the idea is that you're actually making real things and making them fast.
Right. So thinking about how these tools are helping us do our jobs better, I recently been tinkering around with that Chinese company, Manus, and it's quite amazing how it can run an entire marketing department for one person. But can you share a bit of your experience? Because I know you've been pretty deep with that and how you found that has driven things for enterprise possibilities.
So Manus is an example of an agent. It's a model that runs on top of Claude 3.7 and 3.5. Maybe they've updated to 4 by now, but I hadn't seen that yet. And it shows you how relatively straightforward you can do with a system that is just mildly agentic, right? Where it basically sets its own goals and pursues those goals. The models are smart enough to do a lot of work already. We just haven't started using them yet, right? In the proper kind of way. And that's part of that's a technology problem, and part of that's an organizational problem too. Of like, so what do you do with Manus? It can create a website for you. It's the same thing that the LLM models can do. So I think we have to start thinking a lot about what we want, like what we want these systems to do. And I think waiting for people to tell us that is going to result in a lot of missed opportunities.
I'm just going to get to the point here. I'm seeing a lot of companies struggle with agents because they just don't have a clean enough set of content and data and process that the technology can use. So you get these vendors who give you the big gleaming demo on how these tools can work in a perfect environment, but none of these environments are perfect. And they seem to require an enormous amount of adaptation and change to get them working with these tools. How do we get over the hump in terms of saying, look, we just need to revisit how we operate as a business so we can use these tools effectively? Because it feels like despite the noise, the hype, the excitement, and the fact that these tools are incredible, enterprises are still faced with the same big problem. The data is a big mess. Content is all over the place, and it's very hard to structure and very hard to operate in these environments. I mean, what do companies do here?
I mean, I think first of all, it's worth thinking about what we mean by the data is a mess or the data isn't structured or we need to do something different with the data, because that can be misleading to a lot of people. Unlike a traditional machine learning algorithm, which is still really important, by the way, right? I mean, finance runs on this stuff. You obviously need, the traditional machine learning approaches find patterns in data and can make predictions about the future, right? So finance was the most transformed by this because I can do, analysis of a market and, or analysis of sales, or figure out what movie to recommend you. I know other movies you've watched. So that is, you hire PhDs, you hire data scientists, you get your data organized, you build your data lake, and you do this kind of analysis. Still very important. But those kinds of systems have this weakness, which was they weren't good at working with language. So large language models were applying some of these same techniques to language. Turns out we get a very different kind of beast as a result. So LLMs are pre-trained. The P in GPT stands for pre-trained. So they already have data in them. So you don't need to train a model, right? I know you know this, but just for the listeners who are watchers, just to make that kind of clear. So your data is less important in some ways because the model kind of works like a person. It's not going to go through vast amounts of data and spontaneously find a pattern or result any more than a normal analyst would. So when you say get your data organized for AI, large language models are often quite good at this. Some of the use cases I'm seeing for LLMs actually are a deep research style tool where it's like, actually check my Dropbox and then check my my SharePoint and then go to the internet and then also log into this enterprise software system we have and then give me a consolidated view of what this all means. So LLMs fill in a little bit of a different place, and that what data you give them, you give access through RAG systems and other approaches to having them be able to look at your data. But it's not the same kind of data problem as we had for large scale machine learning systems. That being said, what you're saying about process absolutely resonates, right? Companies that haven't thought through process, you need to explain to the LLM what it's doing and what it fits in. You need to design those elements of your organization. So I think I am in favor of kind of leaping in and seeing what you actually need and doing experimentation to learn about that. But I think that a lot of companies create barriers of where they need to do things before they're LLM ready. And I don't necessarily think that's true, right? You will find out what you need to do to make the LLM work or not. And nobody really has that information, right? Is it having access to all of your data sets useful? Generally not. Like one of the issues I see is people are like, oh, we need to go through all of our proposals to give us a good proposal. Actually, with an LLM, you'd be better off giving it 2 or 3 really great proposals that you wrote purposefully and some good instructions for writing proposals that are written in plain English by your best proposal writer, and having the LLM work from that rather than spontaneously go through all your systems.
No, you are preaching to the choir, and our message to enterprises and our research shows the tech is actually the least of the problems. It's all the process, data, and skills around the technology to make it work that has to be addressed. And I think our perennial problem in our industry is we like to buy the shiny new thing when the real issue is the ugly stuff that needs to fix. And I think we've been avoiding that for generations. And this is just highlighting when the technology is actually there, you can see how good it is. You can see what peers and competitors are doing with this technology. You've got no choice but to address, I think, the hard stuff to get this right. But let's flip a bit now to, I think, one of the more fun areas that you talked about at our summit, which was about AI developing a personality. And I was playing around with Google Gemini last night, and it was actually kind of rude. And I thought, this is refreshing. I'm so tired of ChatGPT sucking up to me. Right? But what's your view on the personality of AI and what's going to work better as we evolve?
So, I mean, there is a sort of natural personality of these AIs, and they're trained in a particular way to reinforce it one way or another. I think the biggest thing we're seeing, especially for the more consumer-oriented models, is that the AI companies have realized that personality matters. People want to have something that sucks up to you a bit more. That's what most people seem to want. Most people want, people will stick with models that are friendly and ask them questions. So personality engineering has become a much bigger deal inside these organizations, from just being sort of helpful and friendly to being an anthropomorphic character that you deal with. And so that is going to be a point of differentiation, for better or for worse, among AIs. There's some early evidence that, you can alter the personality of AIs to make them more engaging, so people spend more time with them. So I think personality becomes an interesting issue overall. I think you can alter personality with some system prompts, but as soon as you start altering the personality of the AI, you're probably altering performance in ways that aren't necessarily clear.
Right.
We've been doing research also, just working with them like a person. Turns out saying please doesn't actually matter very much in accuracy levels. Well, actually, it's even more interesting. It matters a lot on very particular questions. So we tested against this large question data set. And some questions, being polite to the AI makes it much better. And sometimes being polite to the AI makes it much worse. And it sort of averages out to no effect. So it's a complex issue.
Yeah, no, it's learning to, I guess, struck up a relationship with a computer.
But we're also dealing with with these LLM companies that are consciously trying to start to think about what relationship they want us to have with a computer, and it turns out we're pretty manipulable. So it isn't just a natural development, right? It's a back and forth.
Yeah, it probably depends on your own personality as well. Do you like to bark orders, or do you like a nice, polite conversation? And away you go. So let's get to, I think, the other big issue, and this is very significant in the tech industry right now, is we're seeing a lot of major cyber issues going on. The amount of geopolitics is opening up companies to more AI exposure, more tech exposure in general. So as you look at the rapidly evolving landscape, if you had 5 minutes with a CEO or CIO of a big Fortune 100, what would you warn them about or urge them to do today as they are going down this AI path?
I mean, I think so at the executive level, first of all, I would say, look, these systems are good enough already to disrupt work in real ways. So ignoring this isn't viable. I would also tell them, the thing I tell all of them, which is no help is forthcoming. Like, the consultant companies don't have better answers about how to use AI than you do. The software vendors are still figuring this out themselves. Even the AI companies, when I talk to them, are still trying to figure out what their systems do. So you have to engage in some exploration and some work to figure out what happens. This can't be 100% KPI driven. It has to be done through experimentation and trying to improve performance over time. So, I mean, all of that stuff is very, makes us urgent. I would also urge that they use AI, right? So they can't just delegate this down. They have to try this out. What I've really enjoyed, Phil, is that you tell me these stories about your experiences. If you don't have that at the executive level of people doing this kind of engagement, they're not going to know what these systems can do. And so, they'll say, like, I need to make time, or I need an AI course. No, you just start interacting with these systems, you'll learn what they do one way or another. And then I think it's the urgency of making decisions about this and not just punting those decisions down to other parts of the organization that becomes really important.
I mean, you do hit a very good point. I mean, my my dad is 82 and just upgraded his ChatGPT account. I mean, I'm like, wow, it's interesting how he's a academic, right? But then I work with so many business leaders. Some are getting it and they're spending a bit of time with these tools. Others are clearly not. And my take is I can tell within 5 minutes if someone's BSing me around their experience with AI versus those who are getting their hands dirty. Do you think this is going to get more and more pronounced in the coming year or two, where if you're just not getting your hands dirty, you're going to fall away as a leader? Do you think that's actually going to happen? It's just going to get very much down to our own competency as individuals in terms of how successfully we're going to perform at work.
Right. By the way, my parents, I found out, I didn't even tell them to do this, both have switched their prescription glasses to Meta glasses. So they actually are wearing, and the same age as your dad. So I think it is, age is not the barrier. I think that it isn't less about having the CEO invent a way, be really good at AI or inventing a new approach themselves, as much as situational awareness. They have to understand what the situation is with AI. And the only way to do this is viscerally. And also it will be helpful to them. And it will also give them a sense as the person who coordinates the organization. And most importantly, in some ways, carries risk for the organization, right? Like somebody has to make choices about how things operate. Someone has to make risky decisions. If you're not informed, you can't make those, right? The whole reason someone works with an analyst organization is to help them get the information they need to make important, risky decisions. You also have to be informed yourself, right? That's why you come to a conference. That's why you listen to a podcast like this. This is another area of being informed. You don't have to be the master of AI, but if you're not informed about what these systems can do and where they're going, you can't make decisions.
We are in a very interesting place. I'll ask you one final question. I can't resist this one, but as you know, one thing I got very excited hearing from you about is you've really got your hands dirty with a lot of the tools that we all are learning about in the market. Who do you think is going to win this race as we look out in 2-3 years in the future? Which of the leading AI companies you think are the ones that stand out for you, who are going to be the next big domineering players?
I mean, so there's a few things that underlie the question. First of all, race to what, right? Right now, if you look at this, there's 3 or 4 closed sourced AI companies that are all very competitive with each other. There are a couple open source companies that are 8 or 10 months behind. And then there's no ability to catch up besides that. So the question is, what are we racing towards? Is there some point where an AI model becomes self-improving fast enough that becomes the dominant model? So is it a race that someone wins? Is it an ongoing technology race that looks like a lot of technology races where things plateau after a period of time and everyone catches up? I don't know the answer. But I would say that the big 3 LLM companies are probably going to stay the big 3, which is Anthropic, OpenAI, and Google. And outside of those 3, there's a question, there's a couple of really good Chinese models out there, Qwen and DeepSeek among them. Their Meta sort of fell out of the race a little bit, but they're spending a lot of money to get back in. And so I don't know. It kind of depends on what happens. XAI, Grok has scaled up very quickly, could be very much a competitor. We just don't know the answers to those questions yet.
What do you think of the potential Google has? Because if they have the courage to cannibalize their ridiculously big search business and force-fitted Gemini on everybody, gave it away practically, they could win, right? But I think it's a battle between protecting their legacy and where things are going in the future. If you were the CEO of Google today, what would you do?
Well, I would say Google, Google's a big company. It does many things at once. They're already disrupting search a lot with what they do. Their deep research reports are excellent. The Notebook LM is really good. They have this AI mode. And I don't know how much of those things take away from already start cannibalizing their search and ad business. I mean, it's very clear the writing is on the wall to some extent for the old way things used to work. People are going to engage in more agentic commerce one way or another, even whether that's actually asking an agent to go do work for you, or just because you'd rather ask the AI, what should I buy, than go do a Google search yourself on it. Before I buy any gift, by the way, I always do a deep research report on it. So, and so I think that the element that's really important is how do they profit from this, right? So is there a way of, how do ads work in LLM world? How do you advertise to an LLM? I mean, there's a lot of really open questions here that I think Google's well positioned to solve. On the other hand, ChatGPT is not going anywhere. They've got 1 billion users, right? Like that's 1 out of every 7 or 8 people. And so I think that, that those two will at least remain competitive in the future.
Wow. Well, they're going to know more about us than we do probably know about ourselves, right? So
always was true.
Well, look, this has been a wonderful conversation. We very much enjoyed you addressing our company conference last month as well, Ethan, and I look forward to sharing this part with the world and to the next time we meet. I really appreciate it today. Thank you.
Awesome. Good. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to From the Horse's Mouth, Intrepid Conversations with Phil Furst. Remember to follow Phil on LinkedIn and subscribe and like on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite platform for no-nonsense takes on the intricate dance between technology, business, and ideological systems. Got something to add to the discussion? Let's have it. Drop us a line at fromthehorsesmouth@hfsresearch.com or connect with Phil on LinkedIn.